Welcome to the Daily HiFi podcast. We do this every Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name is Chana. With me, as always, we've got Joe. And today, our special guest, Wilfried Van Baelen, inventor of Auro3D. What's going on?
Hey. Hello, Chana and Joe and all the people watching. So thank you very much for being with us. I'm very pleased as well that you invited me for this call. I've seen a few things from you. It was very interesting to see all your comments, what I was hearing sometimes on programs. So any kind of questions you have, so I'm ready for you.
You're ready? Oh, he's ready. I asked him right before this. You ready for any and all questions? He said, yeah, bring it.
I think so.
No problem. And it's 1 a.m. over there, so thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us from Europe.
Yeah, I'm looking perhaps a little bit sleepy, but it's already... it is early in the morning, or late at night. But I'm used to, in the music industry. I'm a producer, record producer myself, engineer. Yeah, so that's the way it all started many years ago. Then I built a famous complex, Galaxy Studios, and let's say music is in our DNA. Yeah, and this, let's say perhaps that's what I can present a little bit. Yeah, what we do. Yeah, so. Hear more, feel more is a slogan that I used all the time because it's about sound, of course, yeah. And Galaxy Studios, let's say Auro Technologies is a kind of a spin-off from the famous Galaxy Studios, which I built many years ago. This is let's say, a very known studio worldwide, yeah. It'll give me some insights about it. So this is the complex. So it's about 17 meters, which is about 300 feet, by 150 feet. Yeah, it's 3 stages high, 3 floors high. Those are the most silent recording studios on the planet. Yeah, is a world record, more than 100 dB isolation between each room. So there's like 15 bunkers, standing on metal springs. Yeah, the resonant frequency from each studio is less than 3 hertz. And these were the first ever studios built for 5.1 and 7.1 control rooms already in the 90s. Yeah. Here I built as well the first ever commercial studios for immersive sound. The first one was opened in 2010 already. Yeah. In 2011, I mixed there for George Lucas the movie Red Tails, which was the first ever movie in history for immersive sound. And this whole famous complex is as well the headquarters for Auro Technologies, so the Auro3D format, yeah. To give you a few pictures inside, this is the famous Galaxy Hall, yeah. We can host there an orchestra till about 60, 70 people, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The background noise of the hall is less than 14 dB, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty quiet.
Yeah, airco on, all light on. So you can just with a musical microphone, you can just not even pick up, let's say, the kind of noise from the airco. Yeah? So the airco can stay on all the time you're recording and you do not hear anything about it. And do you see my mouse here? You see the microphone setup for the Auro3D. Yeah, you see there's a left, center, right, left surround, right surround. And we just put up here this front height and back height. That's all what we do. Yeah. So it is that simple. Yeah, it's a very easy way of recording. This was then the first ever 5.1 studio with an API console, already in 96, yeah. Then we have as well the first ever 7.1 mastering studio. And then I was wondering in 2004-5 from what is next, because with 7.1, I was still missing something. There was still something very, let's say, unnatural or artificial. Let's say when you hear music and you reproduce it, yeah. It's not at all the same. And then I came to the idea, I saw the idea about already in the past about adding height. And in 2005, I started to experiment with it. And that's the moment I came to this Auro3D format. And I was shocked about the emotional experience when you do it in a certain way. And it was not always working in every direction. So I was doing a lot of research in 2005 about speaker layouts, about the coherence of sounds, and that's the way that I started to develop the format. Yeah, Galaxy Studios is not only a sound; it is always pictures. Yeah, so in 2006 I extended the company together with my brother. I built up the company with my brother Guy. Yeah, and we extended the whole thing with a post facility as well for 4K digital intermediate workflow. Yeah, so 4K was already in 2006. at Galaxy Studios. Yeah. Now, what I found is when you hear more, you feel more. That's like a very emotional, subconscious experience. Audio is, of course, let's say, it's the first. Our hearing sense is the only sense that we develop before we are born. Yeah, it's very deep in our system, and all the other senses are really developing further when we are born. Yeah, the hearing sense is the only one which we cannot stop. We cannot just close it. Yeah, our eyes or whatever, you can just, the other senses you can control it much better. Yeah, your hearing sense, even if you sleep, yeah, it's always there.
Yeah.
And what I found is, let's say, the moment when you come to a close real life experience in your reproduction, it gives that immersive experience. Yeah, and yeah, that was one of the first things I was thinking about. Let's say, okay, good. Immersive, yeah, let's see, because we talk now about immersive sound, yeah, but do you have any idea about the background of it, how it came? Yeah, so what I found in 2005 is that we are missing, in fact, a kind of new term that describes 3D sound. Yeah, in the beginning I was calling it like true 3D sound, and people reacted from, oh, but I have already true 3D sound at home. Yeah. And I said, no, that's almost impossible. Yeah. And he said, yeah, but I have surround sound, and surround sound is 3D. And I said, no, it's not really true. It's in fact a two-dimensional reproduction format. The speakers are just in a horizontal plane around you. Yeah. And then, yeah, people started to call it so many different things. They started like spatial sound, but spatial sound is used in stereo as well, or like in other formats, or like periphonic sound, like true 3D sound, like surround sound plus height was then used in Audio Engineering Society. So finally I thought, okay, we have to come to a new term that's used for, let's say, this 3D experience. Yeah. And just because the feedback I got from a lot of people from, wow, this sounds really immersive. Yeah, I found immersive sound is in fact what we need to have as a new term. Yeah. And I introduced that idea in the Audio Engineering Society in Tokyo in 2010 already. Yeah, the moment when I launched Auro3D, by the way, in that same convention. Yeah, and it is all about adding the missing dimension in sound reproduction. Yeah, so this is let's say the reproduction of a 3D space is in fact what the idea is behind it. Yeah. But let's say I've seen afterwards, let's say there are coming formats on the market which only 2 height speakers. Of course, you have the XYZ axis only with 2 height speakers as well. But the point is that with 2 height speakers only, you cannot reproduce a 3D space, for which you need at least, let's say, 4 height speakers, or let's say like a cube around you. Yeah, and in fact, that's the idea. So let's say this is a little introduction, and I think an important topic that I would like to discuss. Before going on, perhaps we can already ask questions. I don't know how it works. Are the questions now, or let's say at the end of the show?
Yeah, you just keep going, because if we start answering questions.
Whoa. Okay, good. So let's say what I see very often is the confusion already from immersive sound, which is related to channel and object-based technology. Yeah. And another topic what I see very often is a kind of a misunderstanding what it means, channel and object-based technology. Yeah? That has to do, of course, with the marketing from companies who are, let's say, trying to sell such technology. Yeah? And let's say I can give you an insight. Yeah, how is a moment? This is about Auro. I have another thing. Let me go. A moment. I'm going to take now another show. Can I just stop this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Stop it, and then you do the same thing again. Share screen, and then pick the new window.
Okay, I think it is this one.
And while he's doing that, yeah, if you guys want to ask some questions, go ahead, and we'll try to do that. Add them in at some point in time.
So I will try now to, let's say, to explain a little bit more in depth what the real difference is. Yeah, because I know very simply said it is like channel based means then, okay, just like the normal data you're going to put in a kind of a specific channel with a reproduction idea about it. Yeah. And with object based, it's the same kind of let's say, audio information, but there's metadata on top of that. Yeah, that's the easy way to say it. But let's go a little bit deeper into what it means. Yeah, so in channel-based, we typically, I give you an example, in a movie or like even in music, yeah, you have objects. And objects can be, that's kind of an essence, it's kind of a source. It can be a microphone, it can be a synthesizer sound, it can be guitar sound, it can be, let's say these are objects in movies. This can be all kind of sounds, the dialogue or like certain things, let's say, which are added afterwards, yeah. These are objects, yeah. And what you're going to do is you add some metadata on it, yeah. And the metadata, for instance, it can be panning, so where that object is, where the volume of that object is, all this kind of stuff, yeah, or things that you do that you are going to add during a mixing, yeah. And what you do is typically you mix it, yeah, and the mixing rendering, which is typically done in your console, then, yeah, analog or digital doesn't matter, yeah. Typically, what you use in channel-based configuration is a kind of a speaker layout. And you can have a few speaker layouts that you can select at the same time. Yeah, you can do your mix in 5.1 or let's say Auro 9.1. You can check how the compatibility is with stereo and things like that. But you prepare all this mixing, let's say, versus a channel-based speaker configuration. And the nice thing about channel-based is that those speaker configurations typically are like as a standard in the market. Yeah, if I talk about stereo or 5.1 or 9.1, these are standards in ITU everywhere. So everybody knows a little bit the same kind of speaker location, because the moment when you start to change those locations, yeah, you make different artistic choices, and that's the point. I think one of the most important things is the let's say the respect to the artistic intent. The artistic integrity is very important, and that's much easier to be achieved with channel-based sound compared to object-based sound. I come later to this point. Yeah, anyway, so this is when your mix is ready, and then an important thing what happens is in a channel-based sound is the mastering. Mastering, for instance, is very important in pop music. Yeah, and what is mastering? Typically, when the master is ready, this comes from, let's say, the analog times. Yeah, that kind of tape. Yeah, nobody was having such a tape recorder at home, and it has to go to a reproduction chain. So what typically happens is, of course, the vinyl cut, and this was the mastering. But the mastering is the last moment that you can really touch the sound. Yeah, of course, let's say mastering has a kind of a technical component. It's preparing the master, which goes then to the reproduction factory. Yeah, but it is the last time you can change and tweak the sounds. Now, what we have seen over the years, in the 70s, there were like engineers who really were so creative. They could easily enhance the, let's say, the way the sound is coming out of the speakers, yeah, or on headphones, doesn't matter, yeah. When they were doing like certain, let's say, blendings with compression techniques and things like that, yeah, that was one thing. So they could optimize the way the sound was coming out of the speakers, yeah, combined with, let's say, a better entire, how do you call it, to create an entity of an album, yeah. You know, if you create an album, you don't mix everything in 1 week or something. Sometimes you have like a sound of, let's say, a title coming from one studio, another title coming from another studio, from an engineer, yeah. And if you play this back after each other, yeah, then the volume was completely different. The EQ,
right. Right. You want to like kind of make it all one cohesive thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. I'm not native English, and you hear that, of course. Yeah. So, but that cohesive feeling is very important. Yeah. And as well, the point was at the end, let's say those mastering engineers, they really can tweak the sound to a very nice thing to create more of a glossy feel. And in pop music, it's really very important. It's less used in classical music, yeah, but especially in pop music is important, yeah. Now, to give you an idea, with object-based technology, there is no mastering process. Just you know that. They can do it, but it's very complex, and it's a very complex workaround, and it is not able, let's say, to do the same kind of things that you are used to do in a traditional mastering process. Yeah. So that makes Auro3D the only format who can do, let's say, the full workflow in the channel-based workflow. And it is not because Auro3D is only channel-based. No, we have a possibility to work in channel-based only. We have object-based technology as well. I come later to that point, yeah. So finally, what happens then is, okay, then when the distribution is happened, the idea is that the consumer at playback hears at playback in his channel-based selection. It can be then, well, whatever on the Blu-ray is, stereo or 5.1, that he hears it in the same way as artistically meant to be. Let's say how it was, the idea about the artistic intent behind that production here, yeah. So this is, let's say, a typically channel-based production chain, yeah, which is standard for Auro3D, surround sound and stereo production, yeah. And as I told you, so this is, let's say, that's the reason why in immersive sound, Auro3D is the only immersive sound format that can deliver as well that mastering process. Now let's jump now. If this is clear for everybody, I would like to jump now to object-based production. Yeah, what is an object-based production chain? We start again from the same objects. Yeah, we add as well the same metadata as we do normally in channel-based. The difference is that, let's say, going to the distribution, this is going to be used instead of mixing it versus a speaker layout. Here, of course, you do it in a certain way, but you put everything in an object-based data stream. So you have all these objects with this metadata, and this metadata is known in the distribution chain. And then at the rendering at playback, which is going to be done versus a certain speaker layout. I give you now again an example. If you have like a certain, yeah, like a bird or something here or there, yeah, in the, let's say, in the 3D atmosphere, you can say, okay, that sound has to position there, and you add that metadata. And the big misunderstanding from a lot of people now is they believe, due to the fact that you have this metadata, that you can more precisely, let's say, have the reproduction of that sound. And that's not true. Of course, the metadata can describe it perfectly, but that's not the way that, let's say, that human beings are hearing. Yeah? A lot of people, they don't realize, but we cannot position sounds vertically positioned exactly above each other. So if you're like position the sounds with the metadata in between it, yeah, people might think, oh, in the vertical axis we can have the kind of same phantom image like we have in the horizontal axis, and that's not true. Our hearing is horizontally oriented, yeah, and we can, in the horizontal axis, you know, from left to right. If you have, let's say, two speakers, you can position sounds, yeah, wherever you want between those speakers, and our brain feels like it picks it up. Let's say that's the reason why we call it a phantom image. It's not really there, but you can have a sound coming from a place where there's no speaker.
Right.
This doesn't work in the vertical axis. And I remember when I was doing in the beginning some tests, I wanted to create movements in the vertical axis, and I was, Jesus, why don't I hear these vertical movements? I do panning it right, and I saw on my metering system, I have to hear them there, but I hear them like to the closest speaker, yeah. And it was more by coincidence when I was doing this with my head, yeah.
Wow.
And then I heard the position where I thought it was, yeah. But when I put my head like that, I didn't hear it. What is that going on? So in the beginning, I thought, oh, perhaps my angle is not big enough. And when I was raising my angle very wide up, yeah, then I had another problem coming. Then suddenly the sound was not coherent anymore. Even I was taking it from, let's say, two microphones in my recording hall, which I have, let's say, a coherence in between. The moment when I reproduced it with an angle which was more, let's say, like 40 degrees or something, the sound started to fall apart. I heard like two different sources not connected. When I do this with my head, suddenly they were connected again. And that was something which is for me like, I was shocked about that, because I start to understand immediately that all kind of things that what we learn to use in the horizontal axis doesn't work in the vertical axis, yeah. And this coherence is a very important thing. So if you think with object-based technology that you can position sounds wherever you want, that's absolutely not true. Yeah, I can tell you the most important things for three-dimensional sound to have, let's say, that natural feel are the 3D reflections around each source. And believe it or not, but all these objects are just monofiles. where you can have, let's say, you can, let's say, put it like that. It has not to be a mono. Yeah, an object can be have, let's say, more channels at the same time. But the way this is being used by our competitors, yeah, is typically, let's say, just mono sounds. So they don't contain the important 3D reflections. Yeah. And those 3D reflections are the most important or key, let's say, for human beings to hear a natural three-dimensional sound. And
Very
that's what is let's say, what these things cannot be reproducing. What they say now very easy is, oh yeah, but we can add this in our channel-based environment, because let's say, for instance, like Dolby Atmos, yeah, they have a channel-based part and an object-based part. I come later to this whole stuff. So they say we can put in our channel-based part the reflections, but then you lose the time coherence between that object where it will be placed and, of course, let's say, the rest of the reflections. And if your channel-based system cannot reproduce a space, then it means you cannot recreate this spacing. Then you have to use your object-based system to say, okay, there are the places where I would like to have those reflections. But due to the fact, and now I'm coming here to the fact that the speaker layout is a little bit more flexible, yeah, that creates, of course, let's say, this this very unpredictable, how do you call it? It's unpredictable. Yeah? It's not so predictable effect. Effect is not the right word. Yeah? The result. So it delivers a more unpredictable result for the creators, because you do not know what kind of speaker layouts they're going
that the end user has, right?
Yeah. So let's say these are reproduction chains. Now they are an object reproduction chain, but there are not that many object-based reproduction chains. Yeah. So Iosono is one of them. Wavefield synthesis was used for them, but let's say this is not so known. What we know in the meantime is the following: it's a hybrid production chain. And in fact, when we talk about formats, yeah, like Atmos or DTSX, yeah, all these are object-based. Yeah, they add an object-based layer, but in fact, they have as well a combination of a channel-based. Yeah, they typically have a channel-based part. Yeah, for instance, in Dolby Atmos, they have a 7.1 for the consumer format. Yeah, it's a 7.1 format. Yeah, and they use object-based technology to add height. Yeah, and they have as well, let's say, this kind of this is then the workflow you see here. Yeah, so we have the same thing, channel-based and object-based are combined. They come into that kind of object-based data stream. Yeah, and then they have, let's say, a kind of flexibility as well. This is going to be rendered. Yeah, a flexibility, I mean, from the speaker layout. Yeah, and that's in fact the concept behind it. Yeah. But what we see is, if you have enough speakers, yeah, you can do much more with it. Yeah, so that's what we do as well with Auro Max. Yeah, Auro Max is already existing since 2012. Yeah, so we have already object-based technology before even Dolby was coming out to the market with that concept. Object-based technology is not invented by Dolby at all. It already exists from the end of the 80s, where it was discussed in broadcast. And I think that it makes a lot of sense, because to add metadata, you can do certain things in broadcast, which is very interesting for the consumer. Yeah, like interactivity, like the fact that you can control yourself, perhaps the dialogue, or change the dialogue to a different kind of language. Yeah, which is in the same, let's say, container being developed. Yeah, and that idea about object-based technology I like a lot. Yeah, or if you have really enough speakers, yeah, like for instance in the cinema environment, and that's the way that, for instance, Dolby Atmos was created. I remember that in the beginning they said this is only for cinema, it's created for cinema. Well, this is not meant for the consumer. But let's say that idea is, in fact, that makes sense, because then you have a lot of channels already. By the way, Dolby Atmos has there 2 more channels compared to the home system, which is creating already like not that same compatibility. Yeah. In our technologies, we keep the same channel-based environment. Yeah? So we go up till Auro 13.1 in our speaker format. Yeah? But with Auro Max, we have as well the addition of, let's say, 128 objects that we can deliver at the same time as well to, let's say, to the whole chain. Yeah? And that is creating, of course, that normal three-dimensional sound that we have that consumers will hear. Yeah? And sometimes people think that, oh, so okay, I can hear more immersive sound when I hear it in a cinema environment. Yeah, I think it's not true. Yeah, the point is, if you have, like, for instance, at home, let's say 10, 11, 12 speakers, yeah, then you have that full immersive sound experience. Yeah, just to add a little bit more transparency of, let's say, where those objects are being placed, you have to add a lot of extra speakers. Does it make the sound more immersive? No, not really. The only